Have you ever met someone and, just for a moment, it felt like time stopped? The world didn't pause for anyone. Cars still passed. People still spoke. Life kept moving, but inside you, everything came to a sudden stillness. The noise dimmed. Your thoughts fell silent. And all that remained was a feeling, en inexplicable gravity. A pull, a knowing, as if your soul had just remembered something your mind couldn't quite explain. You didn't know this person, at least not logically, but something in you whispered otherwise. Maybe it was in the way their presence calmed your chaos, or the way their eyes held stories that felt eerily familiar. You couldn't put your finger on it, but it was as if you were recognizing someone you had never seen before. That's not coincidence. That's something else. Carl Jung, one of the greatest minds in the realm of analytical psychology, called it synchronicity, a meaningful coincidence of events that have no apparent causal relationship, yet are deeply connected in meaning. It's not just about bumping into someone by chance. It's about something bigger. It's about timing, resonance, and a profound alignment between your inner world and the world outside of you. Let me ask you this. Have you ever met someone and instantly felt that they weren't a stranger, that their energy, their voice, even their silence felt like home, as if your soul, long before you knew their name, had been waiting for them? If that's happened to you, stay. Don't scroll past this, because what you felt wasn't fantasy. It wasn't just chemistry. It was your consciousness recognizing a pattern, a symbol, a message hidden in the moment, a message the universe has been whispering all along. This kind of connection doesn't begin with fireworks. It doesn't come wrapped in romantic cliches or cinematic music. It starts in stillness, in presence, in that deep breath you didn't know you were holding until you exhaled it in their presence. It's a pause, a space, a sacred gap between before and after. And in that moment, you're not the same person anymore. The truth is, we live most of our lives asleep on autopilot, moving through routines, chasing goals, repeating old patterns. But sometimes, rarely, someone enters your life, not to add to your story, but to wake you up from it. You meet them, and it's not the words they say that captivate you. It's their being. It's something unspoken that breaks through your defenses. You feel seen, not for the version of you the world knows, but for the part of you you've been quietly hiding. And you ask yourself, why now? Why them? The answer is as strange as it is beautiful. Your soul was ready. Synchronicity doesn't happen when we're desperate. It doesn't appear when we're begging for it. It arrives in moments of quiet, internal readiness, when our inner landscape aligns just enough to be open to something real, something resonant. And the universe, it never shouts. It whispers, in subtle signs, in perfectly timed glances, in dreams that feel like memories, in déjà vu that shakes your certainty, in the soft, persistent feeling that this meeting wasn't random, that this person didn't just pass by, they arrived. So if you've ever met someone and, in that meeting, something inside you shifted, your breath caught, your heart stilled, your thoughts scattered, then pause. You've just brushed against something sacred. Not everyone gets to feel this. Not everyone is awake enough to notice when it happens. But if you have, if you are, then stay with me, because in the next few moments, we're going to go deeper. We're going to explore what it means when the universe doesn't scream, but instead places someone in front of you, gently, precisely, like a message meant only for you. And we'll ask the only question that really matters. What if that person wasn't sent to complete you, but to mirror you? If you've ever felt that someone mattered too much, too soon, too deeply, this is not a coincidence. This is the whisper you've been waiting to understand. The universe doesn't speak in noise. It doesn't arrive in a storm, in shouts, in flashing lights. It doesn't knock down your door or scream for your attention. When something truly important is about to happen, when a soul you were meant to meet enters your life, it doesn't feel like an explosion. It feels like a whisper. That's how the universe moves. It whispers through silence, through timing, through stillness. When you cross paths with someone truly meant for you, it rarely begins with drama. There's no grand announcement, no sudden fireworks lighting up the sky. Instead, it feels like a breath you didn't know you were holding. It feels like standing in a crowded room and still feeling completely at peace. It feels like remembering something you've never actually experienced before. That's the paradox of soul-level encounters. They arrive without fanfare, but they leave echoes in your soul. Sometimes you meet someone, and the connection is quiet. Not loud, subtle, not obvious, but somehow, the impact is greater than anything you've ever known. It's not butterflies. It's not obsession. It's calm. It's knowing. It's peace that makes no logical sense. And maybe that's the point. The universe doesn't force you to see what you're not ready to understand. It doesn't give you answers before you've asked the right questions. It waits. It observes. And when the moment is right, when your heart is soft enough, when your mind has quieted just enough to hear it, sends you a message. Not through chaos, but through a whisper. Have you ever felt it? That strange, unshakable sense that someone you just met wasn't a stranger at all, that their energy felt like a place you'd been before, that your soul recognized them even when your memory didn't. If so, ask yourself this: when was the last time someone made you feel strangely safe? Not thrilled, not excited, just quietly, unexpectedly safe. There's a reason for that. Carl Jung once said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." What he meant is this: when your inner world begins to shift, when your soul starts remembering its truth, the outer world responds. It reflects you, it matches your energy, and in that alignment, the people you're meant to meet begin to appear, not before, not after, but exactly when your soul is ready. That's why the most important people never arrive when you're chasing them. They don't show up when you're begging the universe to send someone. They arrive when you've stopped searching. When you've found enough quiet in yourself to hear the whisper, to sense the shift, to feel the signal, not with your logic, but with your intuition. And intuition doesn't shout. It doesn't convince. It just knows. It knows when someone's presence feels like truth. It knows when the energy in the room changes. It knows when the universe has just woven someone into your path, not by accident, but by design. The signs are rarely obvious. They come gently. Maybe you meet them and something in your chest softens. Maybe you talk, and time seems to bend. Maybe you feel a peace with them that you've spent your whole life chasing in chaos. These are not accidents. These are whispers. Whispers of alignment. Whispers of timing. Whispers that say, you are not alone. And you were never off course. You were just preparing. As a nation. And maybe this is the hardest part to accept. The universe has always been speaking to you. It has always been trying to guide you, but you were too distracted by the noise to hear it. We expect the important things in life to come with big signs. We expect life-changing people to arrive with drama, intensity, passion. But the truth is, when something is truly aligned, it doesn't need to fight for your attention. It simply is. Clear, silent, undeniable. That's the nature of a soul connection. It doesn't disrupt your life. It centers it. So ask yourself, when was the last time someone entered your life and brought with them a stillness you couldn't explain? When was the last time you felt peace, just by being near someone. When was the last time the universe whispered instead of shouted? Sometimes, the loudest truths are the quietest ones. And sometimes, the most important encounters aren't the ones that shake your world, but the ones that make you feel like you've finally come home. So if you've met someone and their presence felt like a whisper to your soul, pay attention. If something inside you calmed, even just for a moment, stay. With that, explore it. Listen. The universe is always speaking, but it only ever speaks in whispers to the ones who are finally quiet enough to hear. You think about the man. Your phone lights up. Not hours later, not the next day, but right then, in that exact moment. As if they somehow felt it too. A message, a missed call, a sudden mention in a group chat, and it leaves you breathless. Not because it's dramatic, but because it's impossible to ignore. Coincidence? That's what we're taught to call it. But deep down, you know better. You're driving alone, lost in thought, and a song plays on the radio, the one you both once talked about, the one that echoes a memory only you and they share. You pass by a bookstore, glance up, and see their name on a cover. You overhear someone on the street say a phrase they used to say to you, something obscure, something unique. It feels like the world is haunted by their presence, but it's not haunting, it's a message. Carl Jung called it synchronicity, when two or more seemingly unrelated events occur together in a way that is meaningful to you, but not explained by cause and effect. In other words, it's not randomness, it's resonance. It's the external world, mirroring your internal state in perfect timing. He believed the psyche and the world were not separate, but deeply untangled. And when you begin to awaken, when you become aware of your inner world, your emotions, your energy, then the outer world begins to reflect that awareness back at you. That's why people who are spiritually asleep rarely notice signs. They live in logic, in repetition, in noise. But when you begin to see beyond the surface, when you pay attention, the signs are everywhere. Not as superstition, not as magic tricks, but as symbols, language written not in words, but in patterns. And nothing speaks louder than the synchronicities tied to another soul. Maybe you haven't spoken to them in weeks, maybe even months. And just as you think you've moved on, you hear their favorite song in the quietest cafe. You dream of them. And the next day you run into them in the most unexpected placia park you rarely visit. An event you weren't even planning to attend. The first time it happens, you brush it off. Coincidence. The second time, you hesitate. Strange. The third time, you feel something shift. You begin to wonder if the universe is trying to tell you something, and maybe it is. Because synchronicities aren't just patterns, they're invitations. Nudges, glimpses through the veil. They say, look closer, feel deeper. Something here matters. Oh, it's not about obsessing over every little sign. It's about recognizing when something repeats not in your mind but in your reality. It's about noticing when life feels like it's curving itself around a single thread, around one person. One moment, one emotion. Have you ever experienced it? Have you ever noticed a name showing up again and again in the most random places? A birthday number that keeps appearing? A shared song that somehow finds its way to every playlist? A quote they once said appearing in a book you randomly picked up? You're not imagining it, you're aligning with it. When your soul is in tune, when you begin to live from a deeper place of presence and openness, life no longer feels random. It begins to feel orchestrated, not in a way that strips you of your free will, but in a way that reminds you, you are not moving alone. There is a rhythm underneath all things. Synchronicities are like cosmic breadcrumbs. They're not the full answer. They don't reveal the whole path. But they do tell you one thing: you're getting close. You're paying attention. You're waking up. Let me tell you a story. A woman once shared how she was struggling to let go of someone she loved deeply. They hadn't spoken in a long time. She had tried everything to move on: therapy, journaling, distractions. Then one day, while traveling to a city she'd never visited, she turned a corner, and there he was, standing across the street, staring at her with the same stunned look. They didn't speak. There wasn't a dramatic reunion, just eye contact, just presence. But she knew in that moment, this wasn't about getting back together. This was about closure, about soul timing, about receiving a message without words. This mattered. This changed you. And it's okay to let it go. End of. Another person once said he kept seeing 1111 every time he thought of a woman he hadn't seen in years. At first, he laughed it off, but then it started showing up on receipts, clocks, tickets, license plates. One day, while scrolling through an old photo folder, he saw her name embedded in the file title, something he hadn't noticed before. That's when he realized it wasn't about her coming back. It was about his awakening, about reconnecting with the part of him she had helped him discover. Synchronicities don't promise a specific outcome. They don't guarantee happy endings. But they do confirm this. Something real happened. Something beyond logic. And it's not done teaching you yet. So here's my question for you. Have you ever felt like the universe was following you around with signs tied to one person? Have you ever seen their name over and over again, even when you weren't looking? Have you ever felt like the world was trying to remind you of someone you thought you'd forgotten? If so, write it down. Speak it. Don't ignore it. Because these moments, these chills, these whispers, they aren't mistakes. They're pieces of a much bigger message. And the more you listen, the more it unfolds. The universe doesn't speak through logic. It speaks through alignment. It speaks through symbols. And when someone enters your life with synchronicity trailing behind them, like a shadow, you should pay attention. Because that's not just chance. That's communication. And it's speaking directly to your soul. What if the reason you were drawn to them was never about who they were, but about who you became in their presence? We often think we fall in love with another person. Their smile, their energy, the way they speak or move. But sometimes, what truly captures us runs deeper than the physical. It's not about them. It's about the reflection they hold up to us. Carl Jung called this projection, a psychological phenomenon in which we unconsciously place parts of ourselves onto others. The parts we admire, the parts we fear, the parts we've hidden for so long. We no longer recognize them as our own. And when someone enters your life and causes a strong emotional reaction, whether joy, longing, fear, or pain, it's rarely just about them. It's about what they stir within you. You see, every one of us carries two selves, the self we show the world, and the self we keep buried. The latter holds our deepest wounds, unspoken desires, unhealed memories, our shadows. And when we meet someone with the right kind of energy, open, present, magnetic, that shadow begins to rise. You feel things you didn't expect to feel, longings you thought you outgrew, fears you swore you overcame, old insecurities, childhood pain, the ache of past rejections. Their presence becomes a mirror, and suddenly, you're not just seeing them, you're seeing parts of yourself you've never faced. That's why certain people impact us more than others. It's not always because they're exceptionally special. It's because they reflect something hidden inside us, something sacred, something waiting to be remembered. Maybe they reminded you of your own strength because you've been feeling weak for so long. Maybe their calm made you realize how chaotic your inner world has become. Maybe their distance mirrored an old wound from someone who once left you behind. Or maybe, for the first time, you felt completely seen, not because they looked at you, but because through them, you finally looked at yourself. And that realization is both beautiful and brutal. Because true connection doesn't just comfort, it confronts. It holds up a mirror and says, "This is who you are beneath the surface. Are you ready to meet yourself?" That's the essence of soul-level love. It's not about validation. It's not about filling a void. It's not even about forever. It's about awakening. When someone touches your soul, they don't just show you your light. They show you your wounds. They activate your inner child, your unhealed parts. They pull forward all the pieces you've suppressed just to survive. And in doing so, they invite you into one of the most important questions you'll ever ask. Who am I beneath my pain? This is why falling for someone deeply can feel like coming alive and falling apart at the same time. It's not a flaw in the connection. It's the mark of transformation. You may find yourself becoming jealous, even though you've always called yourself independent. You may become clingy, even if you pride yourself on detachment. You may fear losing them so deeply that it shakes your entire sense of self. But again, it's not about them. It's about what they've revealed. The feelings they awaken are not new. They are ancient. You've carried them all your life. This person simply walked in and gave them permission to rise. And in that process, something profound happens. The illusion of who you thought you were begins to dissolve. The roles, the masks, the defenses, they start to crack. You stop being who you've been taught to be, and you start becoming who you truly are. But here's the truth most people won't tell you. That process hurts, because healing is messy. Because when someone triggers your shadows, they are not doing something to you, they are bringing something out of you. And while it may feel like pain, what you're really experiencing is exposure, clarity, the beginning of wholeness. Love, at the deepest level, is a teacher. It reveals, it disrupts, it opens. And the people who come into your life and shake you from the inside out, they are not random. They are soul mirrors, messengers, catalysts. They may not stay forever. In fact, many don't, but they leave fingerprints on your psyche that never fade. And they leave you with a choice: to continue ignoring your truth, or to rise and meet it. So ask yourself, with honesty, has there ever been someone who made you feel raw, vulnerable, exposed? But in that process, you became more honest, more whole, more awake? Someone who hurt you, not through betrayal, but by holding up a mirror to the parts of you that still needed healing. Someone who didn't give you the love you thought you wanted, but through them, you finally learned to give love to yourself. If that person comes to mind, pause for a moment, feel it, honor it, because they didn't just walk into your life to love you. They came to wake you up. You don't always end up with the person who triggers your transformation, but you never forget them. They cracked you open. They changed your path. They made you face yourself. And that's not the end of your story, it's the beginning. So no, maybe it wasn't that you loved them. Maybe it was that you finally saw yourself, and for the first time, you realized, this is the version of me I've been waiting to meet all along. Now, here's the real question. If someone ever made you feel deeply hurt you, shook you, opened you, but in the end, you became stronger, wiser, more authentic, who were they? Not for who they were to you, but for who they helped you become. Love doesn't always begin with peace. Sometimes, it begins with a storm. You meet someone, not just anyone, but someone who sees through you, someone who walks into your life, and, without trying, without knowing, tears through the layers you've spent years building, the parts of you you've kept hidden, the wounds you thought were healed, the fears you thought were buried. Suddenly, they rise to the surface. And it feels like chaos. You expected calm. You expected comfort. You expected love to feel like a soft place to land. But this feels like you're unraveling, like you're falling apart at the seams, and you start to wonder, is this love, or is this a mistake? Asterisk. But what if I told you that this is exactly what love is supposed to feel like when it's real? Because when the right person comes along, the one your soul recognizes, the one whose energy touches the places inside you that no one else has reached, before they don't bring immediate ease. They bring clarity, and clarity can hurt. They don't hurt you. They reveal you. And that revelation can be terrifying. It's not their fault. They didn't come to harm you, but their presence awakens what you've tried not to feel. The abandonment issues, the unworthiness, the fear of being too much, the fear of not being enough. Every survival mechanism you've depended on begins to fail. Every wall begins to crack. You realize you don't know how to be seen without armor. You don't know how to stay when your instinct is to run. You don't know how to be vulnerable without feeling like you're losing control. And in the middle of that emotional chaos, you begin to ask yourself, why am I reacting this way? Asterisk. Because this isn't about them. It's about you. They're not the cause. They're the catalyst. Their love. Their energy. Their presence, it exposes the parts of you that still need to heal. And that exposure feels like pain. But it's not the pain of being broken. It's the pain of being awakened. This is the moment most people run. When love gets too intense, when the mirror gets too honest, when the reflection is too raw. But if you stay, if you lean in instead of pulling back, you begin to see the truth. The pain is not punishment, it's permission. Permission to feel what you've repressed. Permission to face what you've denied. Permission to finally tend to the wounds you've dressed in perfection. Independence. Silence. Pain isn't a sign that something's wrong. Pain is a sign that something is surfacing. And what surfaces is what's ready to be healed. Carl Jung once said, "One does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious." That means healing doesn't come from pretending everything's fine. It comes from confronting what's not. And sometimes, love is the most powerful trigger for that confrontation. Because love is not supposed to just soothe you. It's supposed to evolve you. That's why soul-level love doesn't feel like safety at first. It feels like truth. And truth can be sharp. It cuts through illusion, through projection, through ego, through coping mechanisms, through false identities. You're not being attacked. You're being revealed. Let that sink in. You're not being attacked. You're being revealed. And the person who stands in front of you, triggering this storm, isn't your enemy. They're your teacher, not in the way of lectures or advice, but in the way of mirrors and reflections. They show you where it still hurts. They show you where you're still closed. They show you what you still believe about love, about yourself, about your worth. That's what true love does. It doesn't fix you. It wakes you up. You begin to notice how often you shut down when you feel vulnerable, how quickly you assume they'll leave, how desperately you try to control everything, just so you won't feel powerless again, how much you need their reassurance. Because deep down, you haven't yet learned how to reassure yourself. And yes, it hurts, but pain is the price of growth. Pain is the beginning of transformation. Not all pain comes to break you. Some pain comes to free you. And the love that brings that pain, the love that shakes your foundation, is sacred because it invites you into the deepest work you'll ever do, coming home to yourself. So many of us walk around hoping love will save us, that someone will arrive and erase our insecurities or loneliness or past. But the love that changes you doesn't save you. It exposes you to yourself. It says, "This is where it hurts. Will you finally look?" Asterisk. This is your fear of being abandoned. Will you hold it with compassion instead of shame? This is your habit of self-sacrifice. Will you begin choosing yourself? Asterisk. The person who triggers these questions may not have all the answers. They may not even stay. But their purpose was never to complete your story. Their purpose was to start the chapter you've been avoiding. So the next time someone walks into your life and brings more pain than peace don't rush to call it toxic, ask what it's revealing. Ask what it's waking up. Ask what you're finally being asked to feel. Because healing doesn't begin in silence. It begins in the scream, in the ache, in the raw, honest moment where everything you've been hiding demands to be seen. And real love, the kind that changes you, doesn't tiptoe around your wounds. It walks straight into them, not to harm you, but to invite you into the light. So remember this. They didn't break you. They opened you. They didn't hurt you. They revealed where it already hurt. They didn't abandon you. They showed you where you've abandoned yourself. And now, you have a choice. Will you close the mirror and pretend you didn't see? Or will you sit with it, stay with it, and begin the healing you've delayed for years? Because the most profound love stories don't end with someone else choosing you. They begin when you finally choose yourself. And sometimes, it takes the pain of another person to remind you where that journey begins. Not every soul you meet is meant to walk with you forever. Some arrive only to stay for a chapter, a moment, a season. But their impact lingers far beyond their physical presence. They don't hold your hand to the end of your story, but they change how you walk through the rest of it. These are the destined ones, the ones who don't complete you, but avak in you, the ones whose exit doesn't mean failure, but fulfillment. And that's the part many people struggle with, because we're taught to measure love by duration, as if how long someone stays determines how real it was. As if letting go means it was never meant to be. But what if the opposite is true? What if the people who change us the most are the ones never meant to stay? What if their role was never to fit into your life permanently, but to break you open just enough so you could finally fit into your own? Because the universe doesn't always send you the love story. Sometimes it sends you the turning point. They come in quietly, or with fire. They bring laughter, passion, intensity. They help you feel alive again for the first time. They pull parts of you out from hiding, the parts that were waiting, the ones that were silenced, numbed, buried, and then, just as suddenly, they're gone. Life intervenes. Distance grows. The connection dissolves. Not always with drama, sometimes with silence. But it ends, and it hurts. Not because they left, but because of what they left behind in you. You begin to question, if they weren't meant to stay, why did it feel so real? Because it was real. Because some encounters are not written in calendars, they're written in soul contracts. They're not meant to give you forever. They're meant to give you yourself. You see, there's a kind of love that doesn't bind, but releases. That doesn't take, but teaches. That doesn't promise eternity, but leaves a legacy of awakening. These are the loves that shape us, the ones that open our hearts, not for their sake, but for ours. They were never the destination. They were the catalyst. And once you realize that, everything changes. You stop clinging to what was, you start honoring what it gave you. Maybe they taught you how to feel again. Maybe they helped you see your worth. Maybe their absence forced you to find a strength you never knew you had. Maybe they loved you just long enough for you to start loving yourself. That's the difference between attachment and awareness. Attachment says, why did it end? Awareness says, what did it begin? And if you're honest with yourself, you'll see it. You'll see that their purpose was never permanence. Their purpose was transformation. So many people walk into our lives like mirrors, reflecting back our wounds, or désir, or dormant truth. But only a few mirror us so clearly that we cannot look away. These are the ones who ignite something ancient inside us. A remembrance, a knowing. You don't forget them, not because you're stuck, but because a part of you woke up in their presence, and that part doesn't go back to sleep. This is what destined love often looks like. Not a forever partner, but a spiritual teacher. Not someone who stays, but someone who shows you how to stay with yourself. They break the pattern. They challenge your narrative. They burn away your illusions about love and reveal what love really is: acceptance, presence, truth. And sometimes, their greatest gift is in their leaving, because only in their absence do you realize what they left behind, a version of you that you had forgotten, or perhaps had never even met before. Sonu, they weren't your happy ending, but they were your beginning. And maybe that's enough. Maybe the point was never to hold on. Maybe it was to be held just long enough to remember your own hands, your own heart, your own path. So ask yourself, has someone ever entered your life, stirred your soul, and then disappeared, leaving you with more questions than closure? But in the months or years that followed, you changed, you softened, or strengthened, or both. And though it hurt, you wouldn't undo it, because they gave you a glimpse not of who they were, but of who you could become. If someone came to mind while reading this, write their name, or write the truth they awakened in you. This is not a goodbye. This is a thank you, because they didn't come to stay. They came so you would stop running from yourself. And now that you've met that version of you, the raw, open, evolving you can never go back. That's the real gift. That's the real love. Not one that stays, but one that sets something in motion that never stops. And if that's what you've experienced, know this: you weren't abandoned. You were realigned. You weren't forgotten. You were transformed. And now, you walk differently. Not because someone saved you, but because someone helped you remember who you were before the world taught you to forget. That is the power of love, not meant to last, but meant to change everything. Now, take a breath. Let go of the idea that love must equal forever. Let go of the grief that says endings are failures. And embrace the truth. Some people come not to complete your story, but to return you to yourself. If this video touched something in you, don't let it pass you by. Share your experience, even just a few lines. Someone out there is carrying a similar memory, a similar ache, and your words might help them understand what they couldn't name. And if you believe, like I do, that the universe whispers through people, that each soul you meet is a message, then stay with me. Subscribe channel. This journey we're on, it's not meant to be walked alone. This is a space where your story matters, where your reflection is welcome, where your healing is seen.